All right, I appreciate y'all having me come speak. I gave this to another Sunday school class a couple of weeks ago, so Tom and I think Mark and Kathy have already sat through this, so bless them for coming back. I don't know why they would, but anyway, so I was asked to kind of give just kind of an update about some of the things that are going on in the district. I'm the district lay leader, and so I'm gonna do that. And the one thing that Zoom is terrible about is I know I'm not going to watch the chat questions go by, but if you have a question or a comment, just interrupt and feel free to launch into it. So I'm going to see if I can get permission to share my screen, and
it should work.
Let's see.
It's there.
All right, perfect. So the biggest thing that is going on in the district right now, it's a project that we've been working probably for 2 years on, and Pete can attest to this because his law partner, Kevin Reed, has been an integral part of it, and I'm sure has not been there working and making Pete money. So he knows about this. But as many of you know, so Parker Lane, just to try to kind of put this in context, is a church that is almost downtown. It is about 2 blocks south of the river and about 2 blocks east of I-35. So it is, aside from us and a couple of other churches, it's probably one of our 3 or 4 most central churches in town. It has a long history. And then just to kind of give you a close-up of it, so obviously there's the River 35, the red part of it is here. And then this is a zoomed in piece of the property. It has been struggling for well over a decade. And so we made the tough decision we as the district made the tough decision to close the church. And I'll tell you now, closing a church is one of the hardest things that we do from the district perspective, because there's always history there. There's always hurt feelings there. No one, typically about 50% of the people understand it needs to happen, and 50% will be under the belief that the 25 of them left can continue to run the church. And so it's always hard, a lot of hard feelings, a lot of hard meetings. But this is also the most exciting result of that we had. If you probably know that we don't actually own our churches, we hold our churches in trust for the conference. And so when a church is closed, the property goes back to the conference, and the conference default has always been just to sell it. And then they collect the proceeds, and then the proceeds are kind of distributed back to the district on funky calculations. But we've been trying to convince them, at least especially in the Austin area, don't make that the default, right? And I understand if you got a small church in the middle of some rural place that it's more expensive to hold on to keep it. But we've been trying to convince them that in Austin, the default doesn't need to be to sell it, because once we sell it, we are never going to be able to move back into that neighborhood again economically. And so we were able to talk them into Parker Lane to letting us try to do something different. And there were a couple of things that I attribute to that. One is Kevin, Pete's partner. Kevin has been pretty forward thinking on that, and he is on the conference trustees now, so he has a voice that people have to listen to. The second thing is we've also, when the bishop came in, he brought in new administrative staff that are also much more willing to think outside the box. And so that has been good. And then the third, unfortunately, was not long before we closed Parker Lane, there was another church that we closed, Govalle United Methodist Church, which was at the time even more central. It was just east of 35, not very far from downtown. Anyway, conference closed it and immediately sold it for just under $1 million. And I think they promptly realized that that was a mistake and that we could do better. So I think that they were willing to listen when we approached them. So when we closed Parker Lane, we convened a little task force to try to figure out what we wanted to do. We bounced, did a lot of brainstorming stuff, and we eventually decided that what we wanted to do was use the property for affordable housing. And we went through a long discernment process about what that's going to look like and who we're going to partner with. And we had a bunch of conversations, went and looked at a bunch of different properties. And ultimately, what we decided to do is partner with foundation communities, who many of you may know here in town. As a nonprofit, they do fantastic work, have developments all over town. And this is one of their renderings. I mean, I don't know if it's going to end up looking like this, but this is one of their renderings of what we could have on the property. So we decided to use them maybe year and a half. I don't know, COVID messes everything up time-wise, but maybe even longer than that, maybe the full 2 years ago. And so we've been going through and working with them. And I'll tell you the reason why we chose them were several folds. They are outstanding. One is they've got a focus on the families. A lot of the people we talked to were affordable housing people, but they were also for-profit developers. And so their goal is to make a profit, which means to cram as many units in there. So most of the units in their proposals were 1 bedrooms and even studios. Foundation Communities had a devotion devotion to families. And so what we're going to have is a 135 unit complex, and either all or almost all of those are going to be 2 and 3 bedroom units so that we can bring families into the neighborhood. The second reason that they really stood out is they offer a ton of wraparound services. A lot of the things that we do as the church, they do for not only the apartment community, but also the greater community. And this complex is going to have a large area, almost a separate building, except for a few offices outside of it, but it's going to have after school programs for all the children that live there and the children in the neighborhood. It'll have summer programs. They do food pantries. They do really, I mean, everything they do, I mean, they try to do for their communities. And so that was just a great synergy, that they don't just build it and leave, that they do some of the work or much of the work that we consider essential. The third thing is they have a commitment. A lot of the people we talked to, their business model is to build the community, fill it up, and then flip it to somebody else, and then they're done. That's not the Foundation Communities model. You don't know it, I'm sure, but you have probably driven by multiple Foundation Communities projects just driving around town. They're beautiful, they blend in, they don't look anything different than any other apartment complex. In fact, there's one, I don't know if it's a few hundred yards, but there's one at Capitol Studios downtown that's very, very close to the church. Probably maybe a quarter mile, easy walk if you cut through the Capitol grounds. And so, and they stay there. They don't, they're committed to the upkeep. They're committed to keeping it looking good. They're committed to the neighborhood. They've never sold a property in their history. And that was something that was just critically important to us. And then the other thing that was important to us is they were willing to let us stay there. So in addition to, so what we're doing is they're going to lease the property on a 99-year lease from us, tear down the existing buildings, build the new buildings. And then as part of the new buildings, we are going to have space there. So the district will have access to, and we're still kind of working it out. It'll be our own, it won't be our own building, but it'll be our own entrance. And there will be 5 or 6 offices, a reception area. There will be a shared kitchen that we share with Foundation Community staff. We'll have a conference room, and then they have a huge space for their after school program, a community room that's, I'm going to say 1,000, 1,500 square foot, something like that. We'll have rights of first refusal to use that space whenever we want, other than during their after school programs and summer school programs. And so, we've talked about, we don't know what that's going to look like well, not right now, but into the recent past, JFON, Justice for Our Neighbors, had been housed at Parker Lane. They've moved out while this construction project is going to get going, hopefully. There's been talk about them moving out. There's been talk that we could right now the district offices are housed in a condo, office condo that the district owns, that we could sell that, move the offices there. And there's also been talk that, maybe we could just do a church plant there and use the community space as the church facility. So we just really want to go in and see what the neighborhood looks like and what best fits. But it was critically important to us to be able to still have a footprint in there so that we can still serve the neighborhood and still uphold the long legacy that Parker Lane had for service to those people in the neighborhood. So anyway, so that's going on. We we hope that we have cleared our last hurdle. We had earlier this summer, these are done on tax breaks. Earlier this summer, we were approved for tax breaks from the Texas Department of Housing. A couple of weeks ago, we got the last tax breaks from City of Austin. All of you that voted for funding for low-end affordable housing, part of that money is coming here. And we thought we were in the clear. We thought we were done. Then a week ago, last Thursday, Foundation Communities received a letter from the state of Texas saying that the Department of Housing had made a math error. And there's some formula where the grants they give out have to be some percentage to rural and some percentage to urban projects. And that they'd made an error, and because of that, too much had gone to urban. So surprise, we don't get our money anymore. So that was a shock last Thursday. Foundation Communities talked to the staff there. They felt terrible. We had a hearing this Thursday where 3 of us went to testify and got a solution where we're actually going to get the money. It'll come out of 2022 money, but they'll still pay the tax break. So now we really think we're through all of the hurdles, all the funding is lined up, all the zoning's been changed, just waiting for the drawings and waiting for the city to approve all that. And then, I don't know, we hope to break ground soon, which probably means in the first quarter of next year. But I am amazingly excited about this. This is unlike anything we've done, unlike anything that I think anyone else has done. And what it's done also is kind of sparked a conversation. And so we've already been approached by other churches in Austin, United Methodist and others, and a few around the state, and even from a couple of pockets around the country, who want to use this, want to find out how they can do what we're doing. And so that's exciting that now we're not just talking about our little 8-acre tract here in town, but how it can affect others. And so I think there will be other United Methodist projects we're going to be able to do something like this with in town. Like I said, we've already been asked by some churches. And one of the things that I think it's helped realize is we have some churches, we're landlocked downtown, right? We don't have a huge footprint. We do have some churches that have huge amounts of property that are just sitting there where they could be able to do something without even closing the church. And so those conversations are going on, and I think that's exciting. And I can't kind of wait to see what comes of this. So that's the biggest thing. And that's the most exciting thing. And before I plow on to other things, I was just opening it up to questions and let me know if you have thoughts or anything.
Hey, Brooks, is there any discussion about keeping the name, either Parker Lane or UMC?
Yeah, so the current working name is just going to be the Parker Lane Apartments. And so they are going to try to have a nod to the church. I mean, I don't know if anybody been out there. The facilities are, the problems that JFON was having is like all of the rats are eating through our internet wires. How do we get that to stop every time we get it fixed? So that gives you an idea about the flavor of the facilities. Part of them had been boarded up for years. They are going to keep the stained glass. And so we're going to incorporate that in there. And so they're going to try to pay homage to Parker Lane's past and what they do.
Brooks, I had a question. Is this in the Dove Springs area or just west of that area?
It's north of that area. So
Okay.
It is literally, it is between I can go back, but I'll mess it up. It's between Riverside and Old Torf. And so it is just south of the river.
Will the name have Parker Lane in it?
Yeah, that's what they're going to try to keep it as Parker Lane Apartments or keep Parker Lane something in it.
Okay.
So
Anyone else?
what's the process to become a tenant?
That I don't know that. They have a long waiting list. You have to go through their applications. And I don't know that exactly, but that's all going to be through Foundation Communities.
So Brooks, is this going to be a mix of 2 and 3 bedroom apartments, 1 bedroom apartments? What size units are we looking at?
Yeah, almost exclusively 2 and 3 bedroom units so that
Good family size.
exactly. That's the whole reason. Yeah, exactly.
I've looked at the
How
foundation.
close is the nearest elementary school?
There are a couple of schools within a few blocks of it. So they've already started reaching out to and developing relationships with, even though we're not really close to being there yet.
Great.
If you want information on Foundation Communities, their website's very detailed and explains what qualification you have to get in terms of income, and I think they won't take felons. There's some very specific rules, and also what they provide in the way of service is very impressive.
Yeah. Yeah, they're great. They have social workers, they do job training. I mean, everything that you could hope that they do. So anything else? All right, well, so the next thing, probably everybody knows, the next thing really big in the district is we have a new district superintendent, Laura Merrill. I won't spend a lot of time talking because she has already come and spoken, but she's fabulous. She has a long history here in Austin. Of course, her grandfather was Bruno Schmidt, and so she has a long history with First UMC. She's just going to be great. She's dedicated to everything that First UMC is dedicated to. And so I'll expect really good things from her. If anybody has any questions, let me know about that, and then I'll kind of plow in. Any questions about Laura? She's awesome. She'll be the first district superintendent we've had that had already prior DS experience, so that'll be fun. The next thing that when people ask what we're excited about or ask me what I'm excited about in the district is the new church starts. In a time, even during COVID, we've been able to get some things going and succeeding that I think a lot of districts are having trouble with. And so that's pretty exciting. This is the first one is this one, and it's not a true church start. It came to us through a process, but this is Austin New Church, which is planted at the Faith United Methodist Church property on South Lamar, right next to Matzell Rancho. Everybody knows about that. It came to us through a circuitous process. Austin New Church was already an existing congregation and church, and it was a member of the Free Methodist denomination, which is obviously a John Wesley based denomination. They were actually the biggest church, I believe, in the denomination. It is very conservative on LGBTQ issues. And so Austin New Church went through this. They started, I guess, with a conservative stance. They went through this multi-year discernment process. At the time, the two main people that were leading it were one of the pastors, Brandon Hatmaker, and his wife, Jen, who is both of them prolific authors. Jen is a big author, big in the, they described it to me as the mommy blogger scene, but she's got a huge following. So they go through this discernment process, and they basically shift and decide that they need to be open to everyone regardless of sexual orientation. which was fabulous. And, but it also meant that they were basically cut off, both personally and through the denomination that they were in. Jen, overnight, her books were pulled from pretty much every Christian bookstore she was in. Speaking gigs were pulled. It was an individually tough thing that she went through. She and Brandon actually are, I'm not sure the divorce is final, but they got divorced. She is remaining at the church and is still extremely active in the church. But also, aside from personally, the Free Methodist Church asked them to leave their denomination. And so they were searching for a home and kind of bounced around. And eventually they got put in touch with Bishop Snazy. Bishop Snazy put them in touch with us. And so we had a bunch of conversations, and they wanted to be a part of the United Methodist Church. And so we had this funny meeting in Bishop Snazy's office in San Antonio, where they're explaining that they're looking for a more liberal, that would be more accepting of their now liberal stance. And Bishop Snazy is pointing out to them that we are very, very far from having this figured out as a denomination. But they still felt, and he was encouraging them to stay non-denominational. They were thriving. They had, they were doing great. But they wanted to be a part of something bigger. And so they were willing to go through the hoops that we required to become a United Methodist Church. They were willing to go through all the uncertainty that all of us are going through now. And so they joined, and they're doing gangbusters. They've already outgrown that sanctuary. They're doing multiple services. And it's been a huge success since this has been going on. So that's been great. Another church start that we had stems from them. One of the things that they felt called to do was to start a Hispanic ministry. And so they started in the beginning of 2020, a new Hispanic ministry called Amor Original. They hired a great young pastor, Cesar Soto, and that's him up in the corner as you're looking at the picture at the top left. Get everything going, have their introductions, and then COVID hits. And so they're trying to figure out what to do. They pretty quickly went to online church, and their goal and the way they positioned themselves is they are the Spanish-speaking Hispanic church for the progressive voice, and which is hard to find. Most of our Hispanic churches are conservative on the spectrum, and they wanted to be the liberal voice. And it was shocking how those how the online sessions took off. They have been heard in every Spanish-speaking country in the world has logged in, and somebody from each of those countries has logged in and become a regular participant in the services that they're offering. Now that COVID is back when COVID was slowing down, they were struggling with going back to online or in person, trying to figure out how they bring it back down now from a global presence down into a local presence. And they're trying to figure that out. I have no doubt that they will be great at it. One of the things that's kind of exciting is because of the way that it happened, there will be one church, I believe in Mexico City, and another in Guatemala that will be under the Amor Original umbrella that will be connected to them, and trying to figure out what that means. But it's again one of those things where the outreach is far further than anything we originally thought about when we first helped to underwrite. So the way that these new services work, Austin New Church couldn't afford to bring on Cesar a full salary. So part of the work has been underwritten by the conference and by the district. And so we've all got a vested interest in it. And again, that's one of the things that's been hugely successful so far. Pretty exciting to see how that's going to go forward in the future. So
Steve Brooks, as far as adapting to being both local and global, I can tell you from personal experience that it's amazingly wonderful to be able to dial in and participate, with what we do at First Church.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, I mean, they're definitely going to keep that component of it for sure. Now they got to figure out how to build up the in-person component of it on that. So that'll be interesting to just see what they can do. It's like, can you convince people that really have never been in person other than a month or two to actually come and make that, vested decision? And maybe do you need to? I mean, I don't know. Maybe that's not how we do church anymore, but it'll be an interesting experiment, but it's exciting because they've already shown that they can do great things. So any other questions, comments? All right.
I have a question about the name
Yes.
or original. Does that mean original love?
Yes. Yeah. And so,
Which
yeah.
is a concept, there's nobody been arguing against original sin. And I think it's very incredibly great original love. Is that God or what?
Yeah. Lose out on that, right? Thanks, Steve. Anything else? So the next, I'm not even sure if we call this a new church start or what, but there's a young pastor, great young pastor up, he's at Leander United, or was it Leander United Methodist Church, named Ray Altman. And Ray, while he was at Leander, felt called to go out, as we all should, I think, to go out and reach into the neighborhoods where there's not a lot of presence or not a lot of people going to church. And so, but he didn't wanted, I mean, I don't want to slam evangelical, but he didn't want to make it a huge church presence, is more of a community building type deal. So he recruited several members of Leander UMC to go through what he called the New Wineskins Initiative to try to do ministry in a new way. And they originally adopted one neighborhood. They just started having community events, barbecues, movie nights, all those kind of things. Reached out, got another group going, had, I think, 3 groups going. And he decided that was really what excited him and what he was called to do. And so he came to the district and he came to the conference and said that he wanted to be moved from Leander UMC to do this full time. And so he is out reaching, setting up new communities and setting up, new, and I don't want to call them faith groups because they have led to those kind of things, but that's not the original goal. The original goal is just to create community amongst the people. And so what I really like about this, other than Ray's a great, exciting guy, I am convinced that in 10 years, church is going to look very different than what it is today. And I'm not sure what that looks like, but I am sure that we need to be trying to figure that out. We've been griping for a long time that everybody's taking their kids to play soccer on Sunday morning, or everybody's at the hike and bike trail. And, we need to figure out how to reach those people. And, someday church may not mean driving in and sitting in a sanctuary all together. And it excites me that he's doing something that, is a potential answer or solution onto that. So I'm really excited about what that can be and what that might look like going forward. So, any questions? All right. The third new church start that is really doing well is Violent Crown City Church. And it's been planted in Crestview United Methodist Church, if people know where that is. We have a young pastor named Jay Cooper. Jay was our neighbor. He was at St. Luke, just down the street on West Lynn from us. And then he in his heart has always been a church planner. And so when this opportunity came open, he jumped at it. What I think is I don't know if it's really exciting is a word. What I've really liked so far about this is I told you earlier, closing a church is like the most difficult thing we can do. Crestview has been awesome. Crestview came to us and they were very cognizant of the fact that they were not sustainable. And so they realized they had two paths. They could either keep trying to make it and run the church and run their endowment down into the ground, or they could step back and turn the assets over to somebody that they thought could make a better go of it. And so that's what they chose to do as a church. And that is far too infrequent. It's usually the other ones where they're kicking and screaming and, church that can't keep up the property. They blow their endowment just trying to pay their bills. And it leaves a bleak situation. Crestview was great. And I think that this is going to be, Jay's a great guy. He's doing pretty good things so far. So I'm looking forward to seeing what their future is on that. So anybody have any questions about any of that? Okay.
Maybe not a question, Brooks. I think it's a comment. By the way, thank you very much for all that you're doing and thinking outside the box and thinking down the road in years. There's just so much that's gone on. I mean, in religion in general in the last 50 years, and we're sorting it out, hopefully. And it's more than just theology. It's more than liberal and conservative. Everybody's got issues and challenges in terms of continuing to reach people and be significant in their lives. And everything, this type of stuff indicates that we're starting finally to adapt and to look for new ways to do that. And if you can't find new ways to do that, then you're not really meaningful, then you really have no reason to exist. And I'm encouraged to see, I look at these things and I think, yeah, there's a reason for us to exist. There absolutely is. And boy, does the world need things like the church and finding new ways to reach people. That may sound very idyllic and Pollyannish, but I'm okay with that. The world needs something, and I think the world needs us. And the more we can do to find ways to reach the world, the better. And thank you for what you're doing, and thanks for presenting this.
Well, thanks, Pete. Thanks, Pete. Yeah.
Hey, Brooks, can I make just a unabashed, shameless plug for the District Extension Committee, which has a separate budget of about $100,000. And we were able to contribute to more original and wineskins as a part of a grant over a 3-year period to wineskins. And all of that money that we had to use came from originally the sale of the Trinity property, which Bobby Cave was able to finagle away from the conference to get the proceeds from the sale of that property into the district. And so that goes back even to Bobby Kay's tenure and through the other DSs that have been there. And it's been a very effective and efficient way of vetting out the applications for ministry that come to the Extension Committee. So shameless plug for the work of the Extension Committee.
Yeah, so Dick has served that for a long time, and we appreciate that. But that is a huge advantage that we have here in the Capital District. So we have an Extension Ministries, what do we call a fund, but we have a group that has access to funds that can help either new church starts or new church ministries reaching out. And so these are two examples. Pflugerville I mean, I don't know if you guys have been up in Pflugerville recently, but it is ridiculous how they are growing. We've been able to give grants to them. So some of the funds from extension actually come from our apportionments. So all of us are invested in that. Some of it, as Dick said, comes from the sale of property. And so Capital District, we have the extension ministries. San Antonio, Las Misiones now has a pretty decent setup for extension ministries, but we're really it as far as our conference goes. And so that is a huge advantage that allows us to kind of do more creative things than some of the other districts. Now, the other I mean, there is conference money for the other districts if we want to set up, new churches there or new ministries, and we've certainly done that. But the work of Dick and others has been critical in allowing us to try things. It's we've done a lot of exciting stuff on that, and I'm looking forward. I'll go to Pete's comment. I think the one lesson of COVID has been help us rethink how we do things, and certainly it's how we work, how we do church and everything like that. And it's kind of exciting to see that at least, it gets you thinking a different gear. I mean, maybe not everything is via Zoom, but at least lets you start thinking that alternatives need to exist that you can be thinking about. And so, I don't know, I've thought we ought to send a pastor out on a hike and bike trail and do communion every Sunday and, see who stops by and who you can talk to. But anyway, so that was one of the things is the new church starts. I don't know how much time we have left, Bob.
Let's give you 10 more minutes. You're worth
10 more minutes. Okay. Well, I'll try to wrap up. I don't have a ton more. So those are some of the new church starts that I'm excited about. There are other churches and other things, throughout the district that are doing new and exciting things. Dripping Springs has a Hispanic ministry that has really taken off. Like I said, Pflugerville is really trying to figure out how they can meet the needs of they got 5, 6A high schools up in Pflugerville now. It's just booming. How do we reach those people and how do we serve their needs? And so there's all these kind of conversations going around the district that are exciting, as well as these. So I don't want to sell anybody short. One of the other things that is been exciting, and I think we've kind of led the way, is, with all the stuff Kathy has been doing here, but there have been a number of other churches that have also started anti-racism work. And so I don't want to say maybe we take it for granted because it's something that we've been hearing about for years, but that's not something that would, has been on the agenda for other people. So two things in particular are kind of excited to be about it. One, Tracy Beadle, who probably most of you know, over at Westlake, she talking to Kathy, she started her own anti-racism book studies over at Westlake, and she has had a really good result. Most of her book studies, she's getting several dozen people to participate. It's weird that most of her participants are not members of Westlake UMC, but they're people that have come from the community. And I think that's good and bad. Obviously, you want to reach out to the community in new ways. And certainly if it's something like this, I don't know if you've been following Westlake High School, what's been going on, but they have been having an outroar. They had some racial issues. The principal and superintendent brought in some training, which led to a big backlash that they're kind of in the middle of right now, trying to figure out how they're going to deal with that as the school district. But so it's kind of time is ripe for that in the Westlake community. So they have been participating with Tracy. I guess the downside is not a lot of people from the church are coming, which, you'd hope that they would see the need as well. The other thing that I thought was neat that was kind of related to our church is before Laura was appointed for the DS, the bishop grabbed a few of us lay people, myself, Kevin Reed was on there. I don't even remember who else. There was about 5 of us. Anyway, he was asking some of what we wanted to see inequalities, what we like about Teresa, what we want the new person to be like. And somehow it came up that everybody on the group thought that we needed to use kind of this time to reach out and develop stronger relationships with Houston Tillotson. And so this timing of this was like right after we had done or kind of announced, or we hadn't even publicly announced it. I think we knew and the bishop knew of the amount that we had raised to help the scholarship or to help the students at Houston Tillotson. So I thought that was neat. And I thought that the fact that everybody else on the Zoom brought it up seems to be that there is some kind of stewing that we can really launch this into some greater thing. I don't know what it's going to look like or anything, but I do think that, all the events of the last couple of summers have finally stirred up people that something needs to be done from the church, and hopefully we can do that. So, and then the last thing that I just did is, despite everything that's going on, and despite all of the concern of the UMC and, who knows what our future is, we have continued to have a number of calls to ministry from kids and students in the Capital District. And so that's exciting. We're going to have a big crisis in the church pretty quickly because we don't have enough young clergy to replace all clergy that's probably slated to retire. And so we've got to figure that out. But it is exciting to see, people continue to raise their hand and walk the path. So anyway, so that's what I've got. Those are I think the biggest things from my perspective that are going on in the district other than the day-to-day business. But yeah, so let me know what questions you have or anything.
Lots of clapping. Unmute yourself if you want to chat or ask questions, please.
That was such a good presentation. Thank you, Brooks.
Oh, thanks.
We learned so much about our district that I had no idea. And I've done a little, not work with foundation communities, but I know a man that's been involved with them for a long time. And a friend of mine and I that used to go to Northwest Hills, of course now we go to First, but they do a great Christmas drive where they ask for money and toys and all that. And we had so much fun going down and picking out balls and dolls, just a lot of stuff. And they were so grateful. And it's just a great organization. It really, really is.
Yeah. Yeah, I can't speak highly enough of them. I think one of the things that really excites me is that with us maintaining a presence, I hope that we'll be able to get kind of two things. Hope that we'll be able to get our congregation members to go volunteer, not only it's close to First, it's really close to us, but really everybody around. One of the things that's kind of been an interesting dynamic that we saw with the Free Store is the Free Store is a huge success when we started it, but when we started the Free Store, like literally within a week, there was all this press in the Statesman and on the newspaper about how the corner of 12th and Chacon, which is like right down the street from us, is the most drug infested corner in all of Austin. And we're all thinking, oh my, what have we done? And then by the time we moved out, we were replaced by a high-end boutique. And so I think that's speaks to how the area gentrified. I think that's kind of happened to a lot of places that we've been serving neighborhoods that may not need our service anymore. And one thing that has attracted me about this is that, it's always going to be affordable housing. There will always be people there that need our help. And if we can get our people to make the short drive over there, I think there's a great opportunity for a partnership from our church and our other churches just to spend time.
Anybody else? Last call.
I had a question. Brooks, were there any specifics discussed about making more connections with Houston Tillotson?
Not in that, no, not in that call. But I mean, I'm open, and I think all of us are open to how that will go. I mean, you probably know the new president's fabulous, and she is open to that, and hopefully she will make that happen. Okay.
Well, Brooks, I've learned so much. Thank you for sharing all this good news about the district. It's
Oh,
just
my pleasure.
great that all this is going on.
It is exciting.
Amen. Thank you so much, Brooks. Let me wrap it up. We appreciate so much what you've told us and all the work that a lot of dedicated folks are doing. So would you like to close us in prayer?
Sure, happy to.
Surprise.
No, that's fair. That's fair. Oh, gracious God, thank you for the opportunity to come together in whatever form that takes and to share community and to share joys and concerns. Please be with everyone lifted up. Please be with those who are heavy on our hearts, even if we didn't hear about them today. And God, please help us go out and have the strength and the courage and the passion to continue to do your work and spread your news and help our communities. In Jesus' name, amen.